All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1,000,000 Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Mark Aylward. And Mark, when I asked you before we hit the record button, okay, how do you pronounce your name? Is it this? And you're like, Kev, you nailed it, man.
It's true. Nobody ever gets it right. Nobody ever does.
So I feel good that I got it right.
It's a good start. Good start.
Yes. And you and I, we got to have a conversation earlier and get to know each other. And I just want to give a quick shout out to the folks at the podcast guests platform, because those guys are really doing a powerful work. That's how you and I got connected. If it weren't for them, you and I wouldn't even be talking right now. So I just want to give a shout out and let those guys know how much I appreciate the work that they're doing, because they allow people like me to keep doing the work that we're doing and making the impact that we're making in this world, which is awesome. And so with that, I want to just kind of start off, Mark, by turning it over to you so that I can let you share and set a little bit of context. So share about, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you do, and also give us some of the backstory of how did you even get into doing what you now do? And so I'll just turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate that. I'm looking forward to this. So it makes me want to go back to how I got into recruiting. And the 26 years old, and just found out that my girlfriend was pregnant. So my entire existence was uplifted by that responsibility, and a sense that I really needed to go out and find something that I not only could collect a paycheck with, but maybe a long-term vision, mission, purpose kind of work if I could. And a couple of days into that experience, I went and visited my mom and dad in their condominium, and they had a couple of visitors there. My mother's best friend had just remarried a Australian guy, a real nice fellow. I had never met him before, but over a glass of wine, I said, in the course of conversation, it sounds like you guys have a very interesting life. I wonder, I'm seeking out what it is I'm going to do next with my life professionally, and I wonder if I could ask you what you do. And he said, sure. He said, I'm a recruiter for Saudi Arabian petrochemical engineers. And I said, well, that's a mouthful. What does that mean? And he said, I, on behalf of Saudi Arabian oil companies, go out into the world, and I seek out very specifically skilled petrochemical engineers to help them with the refinement and different scientific processes in the Saudi Arabian oil fields. And in doing so, nobody that doesn't live in Saudi Arabia is really fond of living in Saudi Arabia. So they don't sign people up with the long-term expectation. They do 3-year contracts, and they give massive salary rates because of the conditions. They give people their own home fully furnished on the house, and they sign a 3-year contract. And then I said, well, how do you get paid? And he said, I get a percentage of their starting salary. And I said, so what would a one fee just on average be for you? He said, right around $100,000. Wow. And I said, I think I'm going to look into this recruiting thing. So I answered an ad in the newspaper. So I'm dating myself. And I called them up on Monday, and they invited me in the afternoon on Monday, and they hired me on the spot. And I really, at that point, hadn't really understood what I was getting myself into. But what I discovered was I was put in the software engineering group. And that's why I've spent my entire life in the technical staffing space, mostly in the software development space. But I found out pretty quickly that I was kind of an agent. I was a broker of sorts and an intermediary. And that really suited my personality well. I was a middle child. I was the one who calmed everybody down when we get into fights, driving around as a family on vacation in the car. I was the captain of most of the teams I played sports on. So it was really fit my personality. And I really enjoyed it was like a locker room. There was 40 of us in this back hall, like Boiler Room. You know that movie Boiler Room?
Oh, I saw that movie. I like that movie.
Yeah. It was much like that. A lot of A+ personalities, a lot of vulgarity, a lot of humor. It was like a locker room. And there were 3 or 4 girls back there in that day. And they were all from families where they had brothers and they were tomboys, because you had to have thick skin to work in this place, man. But everyone was well intentioned. There wasn't any malice, so to speak, but it was aggressive, and it was high energy. So that's how I got into recruiting. And then for reasons that are probably outside the bounds of this time limit, I bumped into a guy. And I got an interview with him through one of the women that I was working with who had left and went to work for this fellow. And I went in to interview with him, and he ended up becoming my mentor, my primary professional mentor. And he said to me, I want you to help me build a couple of companies down in Florida. How do you feel about going to Florida? And I said, that's fine. I mean, I'm going to bring my family with me, but, Florida sounds good to me. So I put $1,000 of his money in my pocket. I hopped in my car, and I looked at my not yet wife and said, we'll talk every day, and I'm going to bring you down there in 6 months. I just need to go down there and make some money. Mm-hmm. And she had mixed emotions about that, as you would imagine, a little bit scared, but I was committed to it. And I went down there, and I think the first year I made 55,000, and the second year I made 101,000, because I remember celebrating the 6-figure break with a good friend of mine over a couple drinks. And then I brought my girlfriend down and my little daughter down, and we started moving into larger and larger apartments, and eventually built a home. And I worked for that guy for about 1.5 years. And then he said to me, I want to start a consulting firm, and I want you to help me do that. And I said, well, you tell me what a consulting firm is, and I'll say yes. And because I'd already worked with him for all, I knew this guy was he was a genius. I knew who he was, and I knew what I could get out of him, and he knew what he could get out of me. And it was a mutually very, very, very much a synergistic relationship, personality wise as well. He lived a different life from a morality standpoint than I did, but we were okay with that, and he never asked me to cross any morality lines in the work that we did or anything like that. He knew better. And that was just a really great relationship. And he sold the company after about 4.5 years, and he cut me a big fat check. And I stayed on with a 1-year employment agreement as the manager of that particular region of the company that acquired our organization, because they acquired a bunch of different IT staffing organizations, and they just plugged me into like 5 offices and said, you run these. And I'm, about a month into that, Kevin, I recognized immediately, I can't work for somebody else. I got to work for myself, and I'm ready to work for myself. I had such a learning experience, a practical learning and doing experience for 5 years, that I knew everything. I knew everything about operations and collections and recruiting and selling and leading and training and hiring and firing. Like, we covered it all. And he was so good at all of it that the lessons I got were fantastic. And it was what I was meant to do. I could feel it. And so I turned to a buddy of mine who was working for the same guy up in Boston, where I'm originally from, and said, let's start our own thing. And he said, I'm so happy that you called, because I've been thinking about that myself. And we both threw 15 grand into a pot and never, ever put another dime in. And we built that up to about 12 million over a number of years. Okay. And then I was involved in a very contentious divorce, which kind of forced the sale of the company. Again, another long story, maybe for another podcast, but it was something I didn't want to do, but we had agreed when we started, if one of us wants to get out, then one of 2 things has to happen. Then we buy you out, or we sell the company and split the proceeds. But if one of us really wants to get out, and he was watching my personal situation become attached to the organization with threats and all kinds of different crazy behavior, and he just said, I can't take this anymore. And I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we're putting you through this. So let's get out. And we went looking for a suitor and ended up selling. And then after the sale, part of the sale was an earnout, which I will never do again. For all the entrepreneurs that are listening that might be thinking of selling their company, take the money and run. Don't take an earnout, because all of a sudden you're giving control of your success on that earnout to someone else or some other entity. And not having done that before, I didn't really understand it. So in hindsight, though, that's a lesson learned. And I worked for them for a couple of years, and it was not It was not a lot of fun, and then I ended up getting my kids, sole custody of my kids, and spent the next 10 years being a mom and a dad. She didn't participate in their lives after the divorce. So volleyball, little league, PTA meetings, I was all over the place. And I switched to a coaching based model so I could do it from anywhere.
Okay.
And I could do it in chunks of 1 hour of time for, $500 for an hour of time, where I'd coach someone in career transition. And I was really effective in just 1 or 2 hours in taking people from a place of uncertainty or fear, even, or anxiety, when you're not sure what you're going to do next, or you're forced to do something else because you're laid off, or there's somebody buys the company and changes the rules. So that creates a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of anxiety. And most people don't know what to do with that naturally, because they don't have all the information that I have accumulated over the years about what to expect, how to negotiate, how to talk about money, how to handle an interview, how to reach out and broadcast yourself to the people that you want to be seen by. And so it's a valuable asset to give to somebody, a set of answers about what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And when you wipe that uncertainty out and somebody ends up with an action plan that's kind of bulletproof, you see them gain confidence. You see them become more hopeful. And when you asked me earlier, what's your favorite part about what you do? That's it. Watching someone transition from extremely scared and maybe even feeling some shame to, I got this.
Yeah.
It's a really cool feeling. So I'll give it back to you, because I rambled a bit on that, but
No,
where we go next?
Man, that's awesome, Mark. I really, man, I am absolutely intrigued by all that you just shared. And you just have this amazing backstory, which is really cool, that I'm sure a lot of other entrepreneurs are like,
Mm-hmm.
dang, I can relate to that,
Yeah.
because we all got our story, and it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't this uphill gradual climb. It was this up and down and up and down.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what you talked about, the earnout, I personally don't have experience with that, but I just spoke with another gentleman like 2 weeks ago for the
Mm-hmm.
podcast, that he recently sold his company. And right now he's in a 3-year period of working for that company and working for the people who bought that company. And he's just like, man, he is not enjoying it, not one dang bit.
The other thing that I started doing it years ago, because after I was part of the sale of my mentor's company. I was part of the due diligence process. It wasn't my company, but I had an ownership piece of it. And so I had visibility. I'm meeting with CFOs and bankers and attorneys, and it's an interesting process. But if you'd never done it before, how would you know what to expect of it?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I do as well is I offer entrepreneurs advice as to how to build business, how to start businesses, how to build businesses, and how to set them up to be sold, or set them up to be legacy businesses to hand down to generations. And those are choices, and people make choices about scaling their business and actually creating a business. And other people choose lifestyle businesses where the business is rich enough to actually fund a lifestyle that they want, and they don't have any long-term plans. Those are not right or wrong choices. Those are personal lifestyle choices, in my estimation. So,
That's right.
so the experiences I've had preparing to sell, building, and then selling, I think there's a lot of valuable advice that comes out of that experience as well.
Totally. That's very, I mean, and you hit it so right on, that these are just choices, and that we do what's right for us. And I think most people don't realize, because there is a lot of talk in the entrepreneurial world about build and scale and prepare your business for sale. And me personally, I have no desire to do that. I really enjoy doing the work that I do. And what you talked about, the lifestyle business, that is intentionally what I wanted. Is I wanted a business that supported the kind of lifestyle that I want to live, allows me to be the husband and the father that I want to be, and provide for my family, and also a business where I really enjoy doing what I do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I get great satisfaction from doing that. And you know, in some ways, well, I mean, I've got things in place where I get paid ongoing for work that I did a long time ago and stuff.
Yeah.
But even when I'm trading time for dollars, I recognize that that's what it is, and it's
Yep.
pretty dang good dollars too, though. You know, and I'm
Yeah,
cool with
there's yeah, there's so many kind of leverage points in what you're describing there that there are all kinds of little choices to be made. But I think that my thing, I don't ever want to do a brick and mortar office anymore. I don't want employees. If I'm gonna give work to other people, I'm going to outsource it
Yep.
to virtual assistants or people that are not my employees. And you can do that, as you well know, with virtually any business process that you can think of
Yeah.
today, which
Yeah.
is really cool. Both
Yeah.
my daughters actually are kind of living the Airbnb life, running their own online businesses right now. They've been to Greece and they've been to London and Dublin, and now they're up in North Carolina now. And
Yeah.
it's fun to watch, man. You know,
Yeah.
you hook up your computer and you catch an internet connection and you're got your mic on and you're good to go, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah, it is those choices. The only problem that I've seen, Kevin, is when people are running a lifestyle business, but they think they're running a scalable business. Because
Mhm.
those two butt heads. You know,
Totally.
you
Totally.
gotta pick one or the other,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've seen some people in confusion. The other thing I've seen is when there's more than one family member in the business,
Mm.
and you want to scale the business. I just had a good friend of mine got noticed right after getting a bonus because the boss's nephew graduated from college and they wanted him to have that job.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, it's you. One of the things that being a recruiter gives you when you're also a sales rep, so you're visiting clients, you're walking into buildings, you're walking into corporations, you're walking into companies, you can see, like right now, I could tell you within 15 minutes of walking into a company, everything you wanted to know about the company in terms of its culture. You
Mm.
know, from the people that are talking by the coffee machine to the way I'm greeted by the girl at the front desk to when people's cars are pulling into the parking lot and when they're leaving. Is everyone smiling or is everyone like dour and sour? It's a really interesting seat. And I don't know why that just popped into my head. I was thinking when I walked in a BMW in South Carolina years and years ago. I don't know if you've ever been to that factory, but wow, you could eat off the floor of that factory, and all the walls are glass, so you can see everything that's going on in the manufacturing process.
Okay.
It's a German company, you know, precision.
Yeah.
So anyway, I digressed a bit there.
Well, this is fascinating stuff. All right. Well, now that we've got a little bit of context set here, I'm going to switch gears and I'm going
Yep.
to reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. So,
Mm-hmm.
Mark, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And Mark, I'm just really excited to hear your story around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, I was giving it some thought, and somebody else just popped into my head, so I may bring him on. And
Okay.
he's part of the story as well. And then if we have some time, I got to shout out to my dad, who has been my mentor forever. We're thick as thieves and talk about everything, and he's a very wise man. He was an airline pilot and a Navy fighter pilot, and so he's been all over the world. The context of his experience is global,
Wow.
and
Wow.
he happens to be a lovely man as well. But we may come back to him. The gentleman that I referred to earlier that brought me down to Florida, a guy by the name of Paul, was without question changed my professional existence and as a result my personal life as well. I became a pretty wealthy guy with his assistance, at least for a while. And like I said, I met him, and this is something I always say to young people: pay attention. Pay attention when you meet a new person. Pay attention. Listen. Look them in the eye. You might be talking to your next mentor, and if you don't pay attention, it might just blow right past you. So I'm golfing with this young lady, Joanna. We used to work together at the same recruiting firm. and she and her husband were out with me and a buddy of mine in a foursome, and we started talking, and I told her about my girlfriend getting pregnant, and I need to find another job. I gotta get out of Boston. I want to leave all the voices that are telling me what I should do and what I should have done and what I could have done and all this other stuff, and so I wanted to get away. And she said, well, you ought to talk to Paul. And I said, well, who's Paul? And she said, that's the guy I'm working for now. When I left the company we worked at together, I went to work for him. And what he does, he takes people with experience, pays them much higher than most recruiting firms would, and teaches you how to boutique the approach. Like, let's niche it. Let's be experts in a small area. Let's charge way more than everyone else does. And let's do a much better job than everyone else in that space. Because most recruiters are generalists. That philosophy really appealed to me, because when you do that, you're playing usually with more confident people. You're playing usually with more intelligent people. You're playing usually with people that are self-accountable. They're not playing the blame game or the victim game. They've got their shit together, pardon my French.
Yep.
And so none of that really dawned on me until I got into that boutique business. But I'm like, oh, this makes perfect. This is much more fun. Right. This is actually a relationship business, right? This is not a transactional business anymore. Yeah. So that was interesting. And as I told you offline, he also asked me if I could help him start a consulting firm. And after he explained to me, what we've been doing is permanent placement. We place someone with a company, they become the company's employee, and then we collect a pretty fat fee. But then the wheel starts over again. It's not a recurring residual income. It's a collection of a fee. Go get another one. Go get another one, which it's fine. But in the consulting business or the contract business, we hire the actual consultant. He becomes an employee or 1099 of ours. And then we find clients that are doing projects, 6 months, 12 months. These software projects have cycles, right? You complete one, now you got to upgrade to the next 2.0, 3.0. So some companies hire consultants as a percentage of their workforce, 10%, 20%. So when things slow down, they don't have to lay off employees. They just stop the contracts, right? A lot of different philosophical reasons to do one or the other. But what I found there was, we're going to pay somebody $100 an hour. We're going to charge the company $150 an hour. And I'm just doing easy math. 50% margin's pretty rich margin in that business, but we got them. We shot for the high margins. Now you have one person and you multiply that with 2,000 hours, you've got $100,000 of profit from if one person works for 12 months. And we eventually had over 100 working. Wow. So you can just imagine, you can just imagine the momentum that you get with that. Yeah. Whole different set of challenges operationally. Now you got payroll. Now you got multiple states, taxes. You got benefit plan implications, 401k implications. You got all kinds of other things. But it's a permanent placement business that's doing really well. Medium size, small size. You might get 200, 300 grand for it. A consulting firm that was doing what we were doing, you get 5 million for it. Wow. So well, they're buying residual income revenue that's already come, and they're buying contracts that a high percentage of which are expected to renew. Yes. The renewal, once you give a client a really good consultant, they usually ask for him back over and over and over again. Yeah. So so that's kind of the story behind that. Paul was we had a lot of fun personally, and we fell out of touch fairly soon afterwards. He moved back up to Boston, and we fell out of touch. Life got in the way, my divorce got in the way, but it wasn't now maybe a year ago where he reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I called him, and we had a phenomenal conversation.
That's awesome.
And he's back in my life, giving me advice, on standing on my shoulder when I need him, call him up, ask him questions. And he put me on his most recent company's board of advisors. So maybe we'll even be able to hit a golf ball around this sometime soon.
Nice.
So that's
so
Paul.
How long was the span in between, Mark, for you and Paul connecting until you connected? About a year?
20 years.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I said to him, I said, let's not let this go on so long. The next time he goes, man, I've been thinking about calling you for years, and I honestly can't tell you why I haven't, but I'm so glad we got back together. And he, it's interesting because he was a hard driving guy. He was in his late 30s and I was in my early 20s, thereabouts, early 40s, mid 20s, something like that. So we were not terribly far apart in terms of age, but man, he had high expectations of people, and he drove people. And the Paul that I talked to recently is much more mellow and really much more appreciative of life, much more grateful, much more humble. Yeah. And I feel like I've gotten some of those skills as well. I mean, my divorce, for instance, you can't go through what I went through without becoming a little bit more humble than you were before. Yeah. And humble's good. Humble's a good thing.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah. And a quieter, more peaceful existence, not like drive. That was a very interesting condition, very interesting to observe and to hear. It made me smile. Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't know how old you are, Mark, but I just turned 58 2 months ago. And
yes,
I feel at 58 that I'm just now really starting to figure some stuff out. Mm-hmm. And all of that stuff that you talked about, that I'm way easier going now than I used to be. I'm just like more relaxed. I am definitely appreciative of so much in my life, the relationships with my wife, with my kids, with all the entrepreneurs that I have relations. I mean, I wake up most mornings thinking, you know what? It's pretty awesome being me.
Yeah. That's a nice thing to be able to say, I feel very great. I actually practice gratitude on a daily basis. I meditate and I do some visualization and say some prayers. Yeah. And in the course of that, I just thank God. Thank you so much for this. Thank you. And when you've probably done this, but when you actually sit down and dedicate a few minutes to say, I'm just going to run through what I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
The list is long. Yes. The list is long, Yeah. And I think that exercise, when you're reminded of how long the list is, you immediately turn around and say, hey, you shouldn't really be complaining about much. That's so right. if you find yourself complaining, shut up, man.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It just changes. It changes our perspective, because what, stuff does happen, but we don't have to keep our focus on that kind of stuff. We just and you know what, we become much more resourceful too.
Yes.
And
yes.
Yeah.
One of the things I discovered during my divorce and being my own attorney for a while and getting custody of the kids, and all the people would say to me, how do you do that just on your own? How are you keeping your head above water on your own? To your point, I found in life, when God challenges me, he challenges me because he knows I can take it. I can handle it. And you find yourself doing twice the work, maybe, or even if it's just the quality going up as opposed to the hours, maybe both. You're like, how can I do this? Because you just can.
Yeah,
you can. If you don't give up, if you show up every day, you'll find out that you can.
Yes.
And it's interesting, because when something like that is initially, when the police came to escort me out of my home for no reason other than a fabrication that was quite brilliant, actually, but evil. That first night, I was in a hotel room by myself and I was overwhelmed. And I got a bottle of scotch and drank a few drinks and passed out in a hotel bed. And I woke up the next day and I thought, okay, man, it's time to get to work. The fear needs to be behind you now, and you got to get to work. What needs to be done? And I just start one at a time, call the attorney, make an appointment, do this, make sure the kids are set on these. It just starts, And I think most people, I'm not sure which way people go, but I was confronted, as you probably have been, as most of us are or will be, with that crossroads. I can be a bitter old man, or I can spend the rest of my life getting better.
Yeah.
And helping other people. And I always looked at that fork in the road and thought, why would anyone go that way?
Yeah.
But many people do.
Yes, they do. Yes,
many people do.
Yep.
And so that's kind of where I am in helping people now, is all of that experience, what you call it, whatever you want. And I never wanted the trophy for who has the biggest hardship. If you want to find somebody who's got it more difficult than you, look to your left or look to your right, turn on the TV, pick up a newspaper. They're easy to find.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So that's kind of the area where my professional advice rolls over into personal as well, because I can't separate the two.
Yeah. 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 So you mentioned your dad, and you said just enough about him that, I mean, I want to give you some time to just talk about your dad a little bit too and stuff.
Yeah, he's thank you. He's 95, just turned 95 in September.
Wow.
And beginning of September. He drives his own car. He lives on his own. He buys his own groceries, not on any prescription medication of any kind, and sharp as a tack. And he's getting old. He's getting tired, but he's there. We talk pretty regularly. And he was just a dad. I mean, he was a dad, right? He was the guy that was, for the kids that were on my baseball teams and lived in my neighborhood, that either had no dads or their dads were just not part of their lives or just absent from their lives. He took them in. These guys would be at my house for lunch. They'd be over there on the weekends. We'd go to practice together. When they had a personal challenge, maybe a girlfriend issue or whatever, they would ask the captain. They called him the captain because he was a TWA captain airline pilot. And most people called him Jim, but and he was from a family of 11 and Irish Catholic family, and grew up in Boston. They didn't have anything. His dad worked on a whaling ship, so he was gone for weeks at a time and came back with lobsters and fish that they salted and dried in the cellar. And that group of 11 aunts and uncles is a fascinating group of people too. But yeah, he was my baseball coach up until I was 12, and very active father. Even though he was an airline pilot, by the time we were of age to be playing, 6, 7, 8 years old, playing Little League, he had already gained enough seniority as a pilot that he could work around. He could bid for flights that worked around our games. He didn't miss any of our games.
Wow.
As a pilot.
That's awesome.
I didn't see a whole lot of dads doing that kind of stuff.
Nope.
And then, through my adult life and all of my successes and hardships, he's always been there. He's always been there. If I need, I'm pretty sure I know what to do, but I really would like somebody to put some icing on the cake for me. I call him.
Yep.
I call him, and I feel very fortunate. And he looks to me for certain things as well. If he needs to figure out how to say something or how to frame a response in a letter, for instance, he'll always run it by me. I'm the communicator in the family, the guy with the golden tongue, apparently. But yeah, it's just such a special relationship, and I'm so grateful for it. But I would say, personally, hands down, he has been my mentor my whole life.
Wow, that's so awesome.
Yeah. I feel fortunate doing it. And if we had time for a third one, I wouldn't call him a mentor, but he's become one of my foremost best friends in the whole world. I hired him at my company, and his name's Miles.
Okay.
And we became fast friends. He helped me tremendously during the divorce by just being there professionally and personally. And he's an outstanding human being, a great salesman, a great leader, and just a wonderful, wonderful guy. My kids adore him. So I wanted to give a shout out to him because he kept me afloat when I could have sank pretty easy,
Yep. So if you look at these relationships, Mark, so we'll look at these three relationships, your dad, with Paul, with Miles, and you look back over the years, and I'm sure you'll be able to come up with lots of examples of this, but I just want to challenge you to come up with one, the one that just immediately pops into mind for you. But if you look back over the years to where you were able to make this really big impact, and hands down, that would have never happened without your relationship with whoever that was that you've spoken about. What's an example of that?
I think this, I don't know if this is right down the middle of the plate. You tell me, but I remember when I had been working for Paul for about a year, I think. And again, I told you, he was very aggressive. He raised his voice a lot. He wasn't shy about yelling when he felt like he had to yell, but he had never exposed his temper to me. And one day, and I don't remember what initiated it. I don't even know if it had anything to do with me, but I was on the sales floor. At that point, I was managing everyone on the floor, the recruiters and the salespeople. That I wasn't an individual contributor anymore. I was a leader. Well, maybe not a leader yet, but a manager. And he walked out and lost his shit. He started screaming at me, and he used to do things like that to. It was a bit manipulative, but it was also like, if I scare them just to a point, I'll get motivation out of that. And that's not a long-term thing, but it works for a little while if your goal is build it fast, sell it quick, and get out. And so and this is all hindsight and discovery. But something inside of me flipped. So I've got a girlfriend I'm about to marry, a 2-year-old child, really nothing stashed away. I'm just beginning my professional career. So I need this job. And this is all going through my mind in about 60 seconds after getting yelled at. And I liked the job. I really liked the job, and I was getting really good at it. But I'm a prideful guy, and I demand respect. Usually I don't have to demand it. Usually I just get it. But I will not tolerate disrespect, because long-term, my position in that is that will eat away at your soul if you allow things like that to happen. And I said to him, "Can I speak with you in your office?" Really calmly. He said, "Yeah." And I walked into his office and I said, and this is paraphrasing, but I think it's almost word for word, because I tell this story all the time. It was so impactful for me. I said, "I really appreciate the fact that you've given me this opportunity, Paul. I definitely appreciate the fact that you sign my paycheck and that you tell me what to do on a day-to-day basis. But if you ever yell at me in front of anyone else again, I will walk out that door and you'll never see me again." And my relationship with him changed like that. I became his right-hand guy. And I haven't asked him yet, but I think I will. Actually, I did ask him, and he said he didn't remember. So it wasn't as impactful in his life, but it was really something in mine. I don't know whether he did that on purpose to test me. Will this guy let me get away with this, or is he going to stand up for himself? Or if he was just being a dick, I don't know which one it was, but it changed the trajectory of my career. It changed our relationship. I gained quite a bit of confidence from that move. I was very proud of what I did.
Yep.
And it was one of the most impactful thing that's ever happened in my career.
Wow.
So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
That's huge, Mark. I mean, that is what an amazing example, And what's really cool about it is that it was so impactful for you, and yet Paul, he didn't even, like, years later, I could tend to believe in that, like, he didn't even remember the experience. Because and just because it was impactful for us doesn't mean the same experience was impactful on the other side.
That's a solid observation. And the other thing, as I think about it now, is everyone on the sales floor, they couldn't necessarily hear me, but they saw us because it was a glass window into his office. And I just stood up to the Wizard of Oz, right? Everyone on that sales floor said, "Oh, that guy's got balls. I want to work for that guy." So it was a trifecta.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Wow. Man, that is an absolutely awesome example.
Yeah. Thank you. And let me slide another little one in about Miles too, because when I found Miles, his brother-in-law was working for me, and I made the announcement on the sales floor one day. I said, I think I didn't want to hire another sales rep. And Steve, this guy, goes, "You should probably talk to my brother-in-law, Miles." I said, "Well, he's working his way up the ladder at Campbell's, the soup company. But they want him to move to New Jersey, and he doesn't want to move." I said, "Tell him to come on in." I interviewed Miles. I knew I wanted to hire him right away. Miles is a very detail oriented guy. I'm much more of a 30,000 foot guy. And he wanted to come back in for a second interview. He came back in for 5 interviews. He had so many questions. And at the end of the 5th interview, I remember this like it was yesterday too, because he became my best guy personally and professionally, changed my life, continues to change my life, and enrich my life. I said to him at the end of the 5th interview, I'm not answering any more questions. I really, really, really want you to come to work for me because I think you'd be a badass, but I can't take any more of these questions, man. Just give me a decision right now. Know that I want you. I'm confident you're going to be successful if you make that choice, but we're not doing a 6th interview. And we both just started laughing, and he accepted my offer at that particular point. And I joke about it still, because remember one day I went to get a new car one day, and I saw one standing at the side of the road on a car lot. It was an Expedition. That's what I wanted. I had one of my kids with me. I pulled in. I asked the guy to give me the keys to that. I got in the car. I turned it on. I checked the size because I'm big and I need space. Expedition was great. I wanted to see how the radio worked. I turned the radio on. I said, run a Carfax for me. And how much do you want for it? He said, $27,000. I said, I'll take it. Like, the whole thing took 30 minutes. Miles told me one day, a couple of years later, I think I'm going to get a new car. You know when he got a new car? 3 years later.
3 years later. That's slower process.
Yeah, he's a contemplative soul.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he likes to think on things. Yes, for sure. Yeah. Well, Mark, I really appreciate you taking the time to have. I mean, this has been such an awesome conversation. I'm really excited to get this out there, because I know a lot of other entrepreneurs are really going to relate to this and what we've talked about here. And
yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been fun. I love storytelling. I've always loved storytelling, and when you like storytelling and you pay attention, and you grow up around storytellers, it's a lot of fun. It's I was going somewhere and I can't remember where I was going to go. I had a question for you and I can't remember what it was. So anyway, please continue.
That's all right. That's all right. I just, for anybody who's listening to this going, man, Kev, I really like Mark. I like the way he shows up. How can they find out more? How can they connect with you if they wanted to, or find out about
yeah. I'll thank you for that as well. I remembered what I wanted to say. Okay. I think particularly as men, we have a tendency to think that we can't emote, or we can't share personal stories, or we can't show weakness. All of these things I think are the opposite of what they are. I think doing that shows strength. I think doing that shows vulnerability. I think doing that shows empathy. And I think there's a lot of people, particularly not just men, but mostly men, that are holding on to a lot of tough stuff, a lot of negative emotion or self-doubt, self-critics, maybe don't have a whole lot of self-awareness and don't realize that that's accessible to them with exercises and practice and prayer and meditation, whatever worldview that you have, or whatever you want to call that higher power. But there's nothing to be embarrassed about if you're struggling.
Yeah.
Get help, because you know what? People like you and me and a lot of other people, we like to help. Right. Most people I know like to help. So I just wanted to get that off my chest before I forgot it. Yeah. But yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So I don't know if you have show notes so you can put a link in there. But,
I do.
Okay. I'll make sure that you have that, because you can get to me. You can get to my website from there.
Already found you on LinkedIn, so we got that, and I'll make sure to include that.
Okay, yeah, I think that's I hate to just give one, but that'll get you to my website. That'll get you to my YouTube channel. That'll get you to other social media.
Okay,
that'll get you to my calendar if you want a free 30-minute consultation, which is how I start off with everybody. Okay. I usually just say, we'll talk for 30 minutes. You tell me what's going on. I'll tell you if I can help you or if I can't. And if I can, I'll tell you what that's going to look like. And then if we want to move forward with a cost-based consultation, then we can do that. And if not, I'll leave it with a couple of good tips that you can take action on for free. And so that's kind of the presentation of the offer, if you will. And LinkedIn's the place to go, but markaylward.com So MARKAYLWARD will also get you to my website. I redirected that when I got that domain years ago. Let's keep it simple. Yeah, that's how you get to me. Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect.
Thanks for that, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mark. I just really appreciated this conversation. And like I said, I'm excited to share it and get it out there. And I know that the right people are going to hear this in perfect timing. And for me, being the guy who facilitates relationships that impact millions of people's lives, man, this was a good one. This was a good one. So
thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the way that you're conducting yourself and your level of appreciation and enthusiasm. It's very authentic.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome. And that's, I mean, I'll just leave it at that. But yes, you're welcome. I love doing
that was fun.